I do what I do to keep people safe so that they can do more. Samdesk has played a major part for us in that it has given us a chance to better utilize our skill sets and better utilize our teams to do those kind of things to protect our people, what future notifications can do and what being proactive can do rather than being reactive.
Hey everybody, my name is James Neufeld. I'm the founder here at Samdesk, and today we're really excited to talk to Jason, one of the power users here on the Samdesk platform, who's the workplace security analyst at Motional, an autonomous vehicle company. And one of the reasons that we do this show and these conversations is that we get to hear these incredible stories of the really crucial work that a lot of our users do. It tends to be very crucial, very mission critical, and not that well known. So we wanted to kind of put a bit of a spotlight on that. And secondly, even though we build the platform here at Samdesk, we're always inspired by all the different ways that our users tend to use the platform. So they use it in different ways that maybe we didn't even realize ourselves when building it. And so we love hearing these stories to think about how Samdesk is being deployed. So with that, let's jump into the conversation with Jason today. Jason, really good to have you on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, let's jump in, Jason. So let's jump in right away. Two kind of a two-part question for you here. Tell us a little bit about Motional, what you guys are up to there, and what your role is at Motional.
Sure. So Motional is an autonomous vehicle company, as you pointed out. I'm going to give you kind of a very generic introduction to them, because I will tell you the folks here, the stuff they're doing is, heads above what I understand as far as the technology level of it. But at its core, what Motional is working on is creating safe driverless technology. We're working on developing vehicles that are able to drive autonomously and be able to provide robo-taxi services as part of our proof of concept, and being able to develop a safe technology that we can utilize down the road for as many people as possible to help make safer roads.
And what's your role there, and how are you supporting that mission?
So my role, the official title is workplace security analyst, and what it boils down to is I'm responsible for the physical security for the company. I'm responsible for making sure that the assets of the company, whether it's the fleet, whether it's our personnel, which is obviously our greatest asset, the intellectual property in its physical form, the sites themselves, that they are all being protected 24/7 from any major risks or potential harm that can come to them.
But I would really imagine, Jason, that an autonomous vehicle company and kind of the things that you're working at is pretty unique, and there's probably some pretty interesting challenges, with the driverless technology that you're doing from your perspective. So, what are some of the things that are that you think are kind of unique and challenging for your role in particular, for what you guys are doing at Motional?
Sure. So some of the more unique ones, I know it's similar to the transportation industry in general, but protecting a fleet is protecting our assets as they're on the move throughout the various cities, as well as protecting them both from any external threats of the vehicles themselves, if there's somebody outside trying to be malicious regarding our vehicles, as well as internal concerns regarding folks that are in our vehicles themselves. Uh, whether it is dangers to the personnel that we have in the vehicles doing the testing, or to the hardware and software in the vehicles as well. Keeping an eye on all these things as they're on the move and trying to maintain and protect that IP integrity is certainly, I think, a unique section of the autonomous driving situations here.
Absolutely. So we'll unpack all of that, and I think we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper there. But before we kind of get further into I think Motional and some of the challenges, and kind of hopefully how Samdesk helps some of those challenges. Let's back up a little bit, Jason, and would love to kind of unpack, and maybe start the conversation off with a little bit of understanding, why it is you do what you do. And before we jump into that, right, that's kind of my build up into these conversations, is that, building a software platform like here at Samdesk, that's one of the most exciting parts for us, to be very transparent, is this part, of the, corporate security function, the analyst function, all of these kind of things. When you're not familiar with that world and that industry, it's oftentimes forgotten. It's not really a very well understood thing, and we keep hearing incredible stories of really mission critical work that folks do. So would love to understand, Jason, why is it that you do what you do?
So I do what I do at the end of the day to help keep people safe as they're trying to build for the future, as they're trying to deliver a future to personnel in in the city that I live, the city I grew up in, and throughout the country and potentially the world, of being able to bring a safer environment overall, to be able to bring a future where there is more opportunity for those who may be currently restricted based on their mobility, based on access to transportation or mass transit. I do what I do to keep people safe so that they can do more. I will say I am very fortunate. I'm supported well by my boss here, Richard Garofola. He has been very supportive of us being able to develop out a physical security program for Motional, and given us the opportunity to utilize some tools that were fairly new to our tool belt, so to speak, to help secure those kind of situations and keep an eye on that. That includes stuff such as being able to put together a global security operations center. Samdesk has played a major part for us in that, and it has given us a chance to better utilize our skill sets and better utilize our teams to do those kind of things to protect our people.
That's awesome. And so that's been your involvement, right? I mean, you've come in at a very early stage company. I mean, Motional being a more, progressed startup now and kind of scale up. I'm not sure how you guys might define yourselves in your corporate journey, but you've had the opportunity to kind of be at the forefront and the tip of the spear to build up your global security operations center from the ground up, as I understand it.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be working with Motional either as a contractor or internally for almost 5 years at this point, through their variations, through previous parent companies, and as they built the joint venture here. And yeah, we've been lucky as far as the support from leadership to build out a security program sort of from the ground up. Utilizing previous experience and trends and knowledge bases to try and adapt it to the self-driving technology industry. Yeah, it has been a ground up project, and of course, it's ongoing. It's always going to be. That's the reality of security. But um, it has been an interesting journey so far, trying to make sure that we are able to provide a clear and concise security program for our people.
Awesome. So good to see the leadership from Motional investing in teams and tools and programs. It is that continual challenge, right? I think some organizations will see a security program or posture as a cost center. And there's a lot of debate going on around, those types of things. And you're seeing, I think, tremendous leadership from companies like Motional that are building out the skill sets, the teams, and the tools to do this. And I suspect, somewhat of a leading question here, Jason, but I suspect there's probably a lot of advantages from going that approach, right? I mean, you guys have, put a lot of time and energy to build something great with internal and work with a lot of stakeholders to get it off the ground.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of opportunities for us to do so. The leadership's been very supportive of letting us sort of take the wheel, of trusting us to be the subject matter experts regarding physical security and what we need to do regarding it. And the stakeholders and the buy-in we've had has been fantastic. Anytime we've been trying to push out new developments, new programs, the response has been very enthusiastic, and making a big part of that is being able to utilize the right tools, making sure that we have the tools available and we're utilizing them the correct way, that it has the best impact for our operations or our engineering, whether it's site management or the fleets or the protection of the R&D teams. No, the buy-in has been fantastic, and being able to push out that support has just been absolutely great.
You guys are doing amazing work, Jason. We've been, deeply humbled to be a part of that emotional journey, and it's so encouraging from our perspective because we have a lot of conversation with a whole host of clients ranging in numerous sectors, and really think those that are taking a proactive security posture are positioned very well for numerous of reasons, and are really kind of setting the standard, and I think setting an example for what a lot of organizations should be doing, and how they should be doing it. So big kudos to you and the team for leading the charge there. So let's jump in, Jason. Let's try to understand the landscape. So you've been trying to build this global security operations center from the ground up. You've got unique challenges. You've got autonomous vehicles. You've got really impressive R&D and a lot of unique requirements to your business. There was a time that you did not have Samdesk, so let's start there. And what was that like, and kind of what was that catalyst, if we can go down that path of life before Samdesk, and what did that look like, and kind of what led you to thinking that perhaps real time signals or tools should become a tool in your tool belt.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I was fortunate enough to be here. Not quite from the ground up. They were here for I think a couple months before I got here. But prior to having Samdesk available, our real time threat monitoring, our disruption monitoring, was lackluster at best. To be frank, it was keeping an eye on local news channels and hoping we'd get phone alerts, and relying on the folks that were actually out in the field driving the vehicles, notifying us of incidents that were affecting them, so we could try and warn the rest of the fleet. Which, as you know, is a very reactive posture to take. It means we've already got at least one person in a situation that we don't want them in. Uh, the catalyst for it, I will say, was part of it was some structure change in the company. We were able to build out some more robust teams and bring in some more leadership. And um, the I think the biggest part was our operations department has been very open to the concerns that I would bring to them, and was very open to being informed of any concerns we may have. There was a couple incidents that would pop up throughout the years where it wouldn't directly affect us, direct us. I'm sorry, it wouldn't directly affect us, but we wind up playing inevitably, that what if game of, well, what if it had come down this way? Whether it was protests in the city, whether it was infrastructure damage, uh, there was a lot of follow up from those where it'd see, well, what plans do we have in place? How do we try and get ahead of that before it happens? Uh, so when we had that change in personnel, we had additional leadership brought in. I had approached the subject with my boss, and um, yeah, he gave me the green light to give it a try and get started. And once we were able to kind of get a foothold in, uh, very quickly, I think we saw a lot of buy-in as far as the difference what future notifications can do and what being proactive can do rather than being reactive.
So let's dig into that sort of what I think there could be perhaps people watching these sorts of things on both sides of the discussion of reactive reactive versus proactive and things like that. But you're in a room or a laptop, or there you're hitting refresh on websites, you're watching local news. I mean, what does that look like, and what's wrong with that? Like, why do you think that just doesn't cut it from your perspective?
So I think the fundamental issue you run into trying to do that is you have, first off, one person who's basically their entire job is sitting there hitting that refresh button, right? You have one person who's trying to monitor all these different feeds, all these different channels, all these different groups, and the reality is, something is going to get missed. There's no way one person can effectively manage monitoring all these different feeds, all these different stations, especially if you're trying to monitor more than just a local feed. We have sites in multiple cities and multiple states, um, and trying to monitor locally as well as nationally. It's an unrealistic burden to put on one person to try and make sure they're finding all that information, as well as inevitably by time we find that information, uh, we've lost time, whether it's minutes, whether it an hour, we've lost whatever time we would have had to try and prevent our personnel from being exposed to whatever that risk may be.
Right. Um, got it. That is tough, and we see that a lot in our line of work. Obviously, that's what we try to solve at Samdesk, but we see that also, right, where there's a lot of people, even sometimes more than a person. There's sometimes teams of people that we see that are in that refresh mode, and they are frequently finding out at the 6 o'clock news of things that could have impacted them, and the 6 o'clock news is the first time they're even hearing of the issue, and it becomes a retroactive, like, wow, I'm really glad that didn't impact us. I can only imagine if it had, and I would have been that classic, like, default now reacting, and I'm the corporate security cleanup team. I'm not the proactive helping you avoid those situations or even helping you in that moment, right? And that's one of the things I think that we see a lot of, that's perhaps more common than most might even realize, of how much of that status quo exists in a lot of those job functions today, right? We see it a lot as well, and I think it's a huge challenge from a reactive to proactive mindset. So that was that world. You guys were hitting refresh. It's a huge burden to kind of put on your team there. Would love to kind of just hear your thoughts of what was Samdesk able to do for you guys in that transition. What were the things that made sense to you guys when looking at a real time tool like Samdesk?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say, Samdesk has been the linchpin in the development of our GSOC program. Being able to utilize that has given us access to, to feeds that we weren't monitoring previously, and to a response of information much faster than we had available previously. We were able to support our operations in a much more efficient manner. It's been nothing but positive on our end. We've been able to notify our personnel of incidents throughout the cities, whether it's criminal activity, whether it is infrastructure damage, things that could impact our fleet, impact our operation. Uh, we've been able to have a much quicker and efficient response because of it. And the difference has been noticeable. It's put a positive spotlight in security. And as I'm sure you're aware, often if there's a spotlight on security, it's usually because there was an issue that they wanted us to prevent. Being able to have any kind of positive recognition has just been fantastic.
Amazing to hear that, Jason. And so, what are some examples that we can think of, as much as you're able to, shed some light on there? When we think about, real time signals and those early warnings, um, are there real world examples that we could think of that might come to mind where that time advantage is so critical for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you some. Obviously, they're going to be somewhat generalized. I don't want to go into too specific a detail regarding the company, but uh, as an example, a couple months ago in Boston, our operations were impacted due to a gas leak near one of our sites. This was prior to our workforce that was predominantly in the AM shift coming onto site. Our GSOC on the East Coast was able to pick up the notifications from Samdesk, reach out to security leadership and to the operations management, and we actually diverted all of our personnel away from the area, moved them over to secondary operations into shifting to different mission objectives for the day, rather than having them stuck in a area that wound up being locked down for, I believe, it wound up being about 5 hours before they finally cleared the scene and gave the okay for folks to travel in and out of there. Um, Never mind the impact to operations, the impact to our workflow. That's 5 hours of our personnel potentially being at risk inside an area where there could have been serious physical harm, serious damage to them, and we were able to move them out of that situation and move on to a secondary operation.
How do you guys communicate that internally, and what stakeholders are involved, and what is that kind of the nucleus of this real time alert trying to triggers that process? How does that propagate within your organization, and what subsequent actions do you take? Is it jumping into reporting? Is it triggering mass comms? What does that look like from your perspective, Jason?
Yeah, so the GSOC gets the initial alert. We have given our GSOCs a fair amount of authority to be able to make that next step determination. Realistically, I don't want them at 3 in the morning waiting to hear from me about what to do next. The part of utilizing this system is giving our teams the authority and the responsibility to make that next critical decision. So they notify security leadership as well as the any impacted divisions, which is predominantly operations, and depending on how big the event is. So in this case, is a city alert. So we notified our leadership, so our C-suite, of what was going on. From there, we make recommendations to operations, and uh, we will try and let them make that decision as to what they'd like to do next. But if it's an emerging incident, if it's going to be too fast to wait for a secondary decision, then the RG SOCs have the authorization to send out those mass cobs saying, "Hey, this is the next step. This is what we're doing to get everybody to safety."
I love hearing those stories, Jason, because it's this from a sound desk perspective. Sometimes it's a single notification, right? Like
Yeah.
it's this one little ping, right? And what you're describing, not trying to put words in your mouth, but it trickles through the a big part of the organization, from the C-suite down to those of the folks that have to make the decision. And so we see that a lot, right? Where people are very well prepared, and there's a lot of really hardworking folks in this industry that are got their business continuity plans all in order. They have their playbooks, they have their different things, and they often just can't operationalize them in time for them sometimes to actually make a difference, right? And so that brings a lot of joy to us here at Samdesk to hear those stories, to kind of see that reach down. And it's great to hear, because sometimes you're just pushing out notifications and notifications, but just to hear how that one nucleus of just that one real-time signal, that early signal, can really go to the bottom and to the top of the organization very quickly, and brings you all into alignment around a single core issue that needs to be mitigated or worked on in real time, that stems from something that seems very, very simple at times.
Well, and I would say, the reason we were able to kind of operate so effectively in those situations was the time we had gotten back to work on those preparations and plans. And that time we had gotten back was because we didn't have personnel that were sitting there, basically just hitting F5 over and over to see what the news updates were. We can refocus their attention to help us have these plans put into place, so that if we do have to operate, we have a playbook to work from. Yeah, I would say the only other comments I have, at least in regards to Samdesk, I just want to tell you, I think I've told your folks that I've worked with, especially Rada and Joe, um, often, that the number one thing for us, as far as the value we've gotten from Samdesk, is the responsiveness from you guys, and the turnaround time is just fantastic. The customer service side of it has been incredibly responsive. You guys have been very open and informative anytime we've had any questions or concerns. And I mentioned it earlier that the Samdesk is kind of the linchpin in our GSOC, and I attribute a lot of the success we've had in building out this program to that system, and being able to use it as a showcase anytime I need to show leadership why the GSOCs exist and what value it brings to the table.
Delighted to hear all of that, Jason. I think the team here at Samdesk is fantastic, and I try my best to stay out of their way, to let them do their best work. And so delighted to hear that, of course, and thank you very much. And all I can say is that I agree that I'm delighted to work with some fantastic people that inspire me and push me, and they do some really great work as well. And no, I appreciate the conversation and just the dialogue around, I think, this nuanced point, Jason, of communicating the importance of a notification at the right time, to articulate the importance of that signal and what you would be doing if you didn't have it, right? And it's a small thing, but it is such a powerful thing, I think, and hopefully we agree on that, right?
Yeah.
But just that small thing, but it's hard to articulate that at times, of the importance of the work that gets triggered from that early warning.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say, I think the threat notifications, the disruption notifications, those kind of systems are indicative of a shift in the security industry. We're moving away from the idea of just, you got to have personnel that are walking the site, checking the doors, to more of a skill based role in the industry, where we're asking you to use your knowledge and your expertise and apply it with these tools to have a more proactive approach to security, to work on, rather than just documenting, yes, I've gone through the building and everything's okay, to, we are keeping these people and these assets and these safe in a much larger scale than we could previously.
It's one of those concepts that we talk a lot about here at Samdesk too. I think there, the shift is that like you're describing, right? It used to be that all of the problems would happen with inside your four walls, right?
Yeah.
And so our teams and structures would be, set up with that way, that surely the problem would be happening within my remit. And if we've learned anything within the last couple of years, going through pandemics and now a war and everything else that's been happening in between those things, it is, most often, I mean, I don't know if you think this is a true statement, but what we see is that it is most often the things happening outside your four walls that makes the biggest impact for the things inside your four walls.
Oh, absolutely. I would absolutely agree with you. Um, and a large part of it is, to an extent, I can control what happens in these four walls, right? I've got personnel available. We have policies, procedures put in place. We have, great teams here, to, whether it's through HR, legal, operation. We have folks that are able to help set the tone for the workplace we're in and help keep a standard of safety and security. But as soon as you step outside of those four walls, we're hoping for the best, and we're trying to give you you the employee the most information and the best advice we can to help safeguard you from that. But as you said, the things outside are going to be a much bigger impact. They're gonna bleed into what's happening inside these walls.
And that's where we just continually see that same thing. And I think we're seeing the same things, right, Jason? Where that's this will be a selfish perspective from Samdesk, obviously, but it is not even just being our tool or any other tool. How much of that is left to chance within so many corporate security teams that we see today, right? I think there's a lot of hardworking people there. There's people that are doing well, but I'm not sure that they're really honed in on this concept of the external factors that are the biggest risks for your organization. And there's a lot of rolling of the dice that we do every day, and thankfully that's probably being okay for most organizations, but that's not strategy. That is not that's not that's for failure to prepare is planning for failure, whatever the expression might be. It's that, and we're seeing it with our supply chains, our health risks, and all those sorts of stuff. We don't have to look very far to realize that we have been impacted by these external factors, and are we rolling the dice with a lot of our programs and structures and strategies within our GSOC or our corporate security posture, right? I fear a lot of times we are. We're leaving it up to chance, and it's not a sound strategy at all times.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The concerns that I have had prior to being able to set up the GSOC are very similar. The idea that we have these external threats that we are vaguely aware of, sort of on the perimeter of what we're paying attention to, and as we're moving forward here, as technologies develop, as our industry shifts and change, they've got to move from being on the perimeter to being a focal point on however many tasks or however many points of focus you're working on, being able to try and have a plan for these things in place of how they may or may not impact our operations.
Amazing. Well, Jason, thank you so much for the conversation today. Really appreciate your time to tell a bit of the story. We are deeply humbled to support the work that you do at Motional. Motional, of course, fantastic company pushing the boundaries of what's possible in mobility. So we're deeply humbled to just be part of the incredible journey and the incredible work that you do in your team. So kudos for what you guys do, and keep up the good fight and pushing forward the way you guys are. And thanks so much for having the chat with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.